She said it on a Tuesday. Not loudly, not dramatically, not with the trembling courage of someone who had rehearsed. She said it the way she said everything, quietly, precisely, with the specific economy of a woman who had learned that words cost something and chose hers accordingly. He had been standing at the window of his study, his back to the room, watching Seoul move in the rain below. His fiancée had left 20 minutes earlier. The specific quality of silence she left behind was the kind Rena had learned to read in her first week. Not peace, but the absence of performance. The moment when Kang Seo-jun stopped being the version of himself the world required and became simply a person standing at a window. She had come to replace the flowers on the side table. She had been doing exactly that, her hands efficient and quiet, not looking at him when she said it. She's not for you. For words, barely above a whisper, directed at the flowers or the floor, or some point between them that was not quite him. He turned. She did not look up from the arrangement. Her hands continued their work, stem by stem, the precision of someone who took care with things. He said nothing, not because he had no answer, not because he was angry, because in 11 years of running the most feared criminal organization in Seoul, no one had ever said anything that true to him so quietly. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Welcome to this channel. And honey, some truths are so quiet they shake the whole room. Like this video if you felt that. Subscribe. We're just starting. Rena Boateng had taken the position because it was the best option available and because she was practical above all things. She was 29. She had a degree in hospitality management from a university in Accra that had cost her family more than they could afford and which she had repaid by being very, very good at her work. 7 years in Seoul. First at a hotel, then at a private events company, then at 2 different households that had given her references warm enough to open doors she hadn't expected to reach. The Kang estate placement had come through an agency that specialized in high-net-worth households. The briefing had been thorough and also carefully incomplete. Mr. Kang is private. He has expectations. The previous 3 staff members lasted 2 months, 8 months, and 3 weeks respectively. The agent had paused. You come highly recommended. Rena had asked what had ended the previous placements. The agent had chosen her words with care. The environment is demanding. Rena had taken the position anyway. She had assessed the salary, the live-in arrangement, the quality of the references she would earn, and she had said yes. She was practical. What the briefing had not mentioned, or had mentioned obliquely in ways she had not fully decoded, was that the most demanding thing about the environment was not Mr. Kang's standards. It was watching a person be unhappy in a very expensive and well-organized way. She understood this by day 3. By day 3, she understood the household's rhythms, when he worked, when he traveled, when the fiancé visited, which was twice a week on a schedule that had the quality of a business appointment rather than a relationship. She understood the specific silence of the estate after those visits. She understood that the staff moved differently after them. More carefully, more quietly, with the practiced awareness of people navigating a pressure system. She observed this without commenting on it. She was professional. She was there to manage the household, not to have opinions about it. But she was also a person, and persons notice things. She noticed the way he looked at his desk after the fiancé left. Not thinking about the desk, but using it as a surface for his eyes while his mind was somewhere else entirely. She noticed the way he ate alone most evenings, not sadly, not dramatically, but with the specific absence of expectation of someone who had stopped expecting meals to be anything other than fuel. She noticed the books he read, which were history and philosophy, and occasionally, when he thought no one was looking, poetry. She noticed, on the 5th day, that he knew the names of all the staff. This was unusual in her experience. Most employers of his wealth and stature maintained a deliberate distance, not unkindly, but as a matter of architectural choice, a way of organizing the world that put certain people in certain categories. He did not do this. He addressed people by name. He noticed when someone looked tired. He did not comment on it, did not perform concern, but he noticed, and the noticing changed the temperature of his directives slightly. She filed this information under important and went about her work. Her name was Park Ji-won. She was 31. the only daughter of a man whose name appeared in the same careful journalistic circumlocutions as Kang Seo-jun's, connected to organizations operating outside conventional regulatory frameworks. She was intelligent, impeccably dressed, and in Rena's professional assessment, absolutely and completely wrong for him. This was not a judgment Rena made quickly or carelessly. She made it the way she made all assessments, by observation over time without the interference of feeling. What she observed, Ji-won arrived with the specific energy of someone conducting a site visit rather than visiting a partner. She moved through the estate with the assessing eye of a future owner taking inventory. She spoke to the staff with the distracted politeness of someone for whom staff were interchangeable. She spoke to Kang Seo-jun with the crisp efficiency of a colleague discussing shared objectives. None of this was cruel. None of it was even particularly wrong by the standards of the world they operated in. Rena understood enough about the organization, from the things she quietly observed and the things the household senior staff occasionally mentioned, to understand that this engagement was strategic rather than personal. A merger, a consolidation, the kind of arrangement that made sense on paper to people who managed their lives primarily on paper. What she also observed, the way he was when Ji-won was not there. He was different. Not warmer, warmth was not quite the right word. More present. More himself. She had come to understand, by the end of the second week, that the version of Kang Seo-jun that existed at 9 o'clock at night in the kitchen, making coffee with slightly too much attention to the pour, or standing at the library window with a book held loosely in one hand, was more real than the version that sat across meeting tables from Ji-won discussing territory and alliance. She would not have been able to say exactly why she understood this. She simply did. On the third week, Ji-won had arrived for one of the scheduled visits and had, in passing, redirected Rena's arrangement of a guest bedroom without looking at her while doing it. It had not been unkind. It had not been anything except an unconscious demonstration that some people did not fully register as people to her. Rena had rearranged the flowers without comment. She was professional. But she had thought, precisely and privately, this is not who he is. She had not said it. She was not employed to say it. She was employed to manage the household, and she managed it. And then Tuesday came. It had been a longer visit than usual. Ji-won had stayed 3 hours, which was 40 minutes longer than her usual window. Rena had not been in the room for any of it, but she had moved through the adjacent spaces with the professional awareness of someone monitoring an environment, and she had understood from the quality of the silences, and one or two carrying fragments of conversation, that the visit had been about something specific and pressing. She did not know what. It was not her business. What she did know, when she came to replace the flowers at 6 in the evening, was that Ji-won had left 20 minutes earlier, and that Kang Seo-jun was standing at the window in the particular way he stood when the weight of what he was building was resting heavily on him. She worked quietly, stem by stem. She was nearly finished when it came out. She did not plan it. She would not have been able to explain, afterward, exactly what loosened it. Perhaps the quality of his stillness. Perhaps the specific way he was looking at Seoul, not at anything in it, not with the calculating attention of a man surveying his territory, but with the tired, unfocused gaze of someone who was not sure what they were building it all for. Perhaps she was simply tired of observing something true and saying nothing. She's not for you. For words. Barely above speaking volume. She did not look up. The silence that followed lasted long enough that she became very aware of it. She placed the last stem. She stepped back from the arrangement. And then she looked up because professional composure required it, because she could not have said something and then hidden behind the flowers. He had turned from the window. He was looking at her with an expression she had not seen on him before, not the controlled assessment he wore for business, not the careful courtesy he extended to staff. Something quieter. The look of a person who has just been told something they already knew. He said nothing. She held his gaze for the appropriate number of seconds and then looked away. "I'll finish the East Wing rooms," she said, which was true, and left. She was halfway down the corridor before she allowed herself to acknowledge that her hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear. From something she did not have a precise name for. She did the East Wing rooms with exceptional thoroughness. He did not address what she had said. For 2 days, he moved through the estate with the same measured deliberateness, the same careful courtesy toward staff, the same patterns she had mapped in her first weeks. She did her work. They occupied the same spaces in the way of people who have developed a household rhythm, efficient, unobtrusive, professional. On the third day, he came to the kitchen at 9 in the evening and found her reviewing the week's supply order at the table, which was her habit. He made coffee with the pour-over she had quietly demonstrated the correct ratio for 3 weeks ago without being asked. He set a second cup in front of her without saying anything. She looked at it, then at him. He sat down across from her with his own cup and opened a newspaper that was 2 days old. She went back to the supply order. They sat in the kitchen for 40 minutes. She reviewed orders. He read a newspaper from 2 days ago. Neither spoke. At the end of it, he stood, rinsed his cup, said goodnight the way he always said goodnight, simply without performance, and left. She sat for a moment after he'd gone. She thought, this is either the beginning of something or it is a person showing me kindness because I said a true thing and he is grateful for true things. She thought, both of those possibilities require the same response from me, which is to continue being professional and to not mistake kindness for something it has not declared itself to be. She rinsed her cup and went to bed. The kitchen evenings on the 16th evening, he asked her about Ghana. Not in the way people asked about places they considered foreign and therefore interesting in a surface way. Not the food, not the weather, not the generic questions that reduced a country to its most exportable features. He asked, what did you miss most when you first came to Seoul? She thought about it. Rain, she said. The sound of it. Seoul rain sounds different. It sounds like it's in a hurry. Rain in Accra sounds like it has somewhere to be, but it's not rushing. He considered this. I've never thought about rain having a pace. Most things have a pace if you listen to them long enough. He looked at her. What's the pace of this house? She thought about this more carefully, because it was a real question and he deserved a real answer. Controlled, she said finally. Everything here moves at the speed of someone who has decided in advance how things will go. That's not bad, it's efficient. But it means that when something moves at a different speed, it's very noticeable. You move at a different speed, he said. I move at the speed that suits the task, she said. Not the speed that performs competence. He was quiet for a moment. There's a difference. Yes. I used to know the difference, he said. I'm not sure I still do. She did not answer immediately, which was a thing he had come to expect from her. She did not fill silences with words just because silence existed. She waited until she had something worth saying, and then she said it. I think you know it better than you think, she said. You read 2-day-old newspapers because you want to read them, not because you need to seem informed. That's a person who knows the difference. He looked at her over his cup. You notice very specific things, he said. I notice everything, she said simply. It's a professional habit that became a personal one. I stopped being able to turn it off. Does it bother you? Sometimes. She set down her pen. It's difficult to be in rooms where what people are saying and what they mean are very different. I feel both things simultaneously and it's tiring. What about this room? She looked around the kitchen. This room is fine, she said. What you say and what you mean are usually the same thing. It's restful. Something moved across his face that she had started to recognize. Not quite a smile, but the predecessor to one. The moment before a person who doesn't smile easily almost does. You find a mafia boss restful, he said. I find an honest person restful, she said. The mafia part is background information. He did laugh then, short, quiet, real. The kind of laugh that surprised the person producing it. She went back to her accounts. He picked up his newspaper. The kitchen settled back into its particular quiet, which was different from the silence of the rest of the house in the way that she had described, moving at the right pace rather than the performed one. Continued, not every night, 3 or 4 times a week, with the irregular rhythm of 2 people whose schedules occasionally aligned rather than the programmed regularity of something arranged. He read. She worked. Sometimes one of them said something. She mentioned that the east wing radiator was making a sound that suggested it needed attention. He mentioned that the library's 3rd shelf had developed a lean. Practical observations. Household matters. Except that, on the 9th evening, he set down his newspaper and said, without preamble, why do you say things like that? She looked up. Like what? True things. To people who haven't asked. She considered this. I don't usually, she said. I made an exception. Why? She looked at him. He was looking at her with the full attention she had come to understand was characteristic. The quality of a person who, when they gave you their focus, gave you all of it. Because you looked like someone who needed to hear it, she said. And because I thought you already knew it and just needed someone to say it out loud. He was quiet for a moment. Did it change anything? He asked. I don't know, she said honestly. Did it? He looked at his coffee. I'm still engaged. I know. The arrangement is, he stopped. Complicated, she offered. Strategic. Yes. Another silence. Outside the kitchen window, Seoul moved through its evening. You're very direct, he said. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. You're very honest when you're not performing, she said. I find it easier to be direct with honest people. He looked at her with the expression she had seen the first time, that quiet, recognizing look. Most people find it easier to be indirect with powerful ones. I'm not most people, she said simply, and you're not most powerful ones. It happened on the 14th kitchen evening. He had been quieter than usual for 3 days. She had noted this without commenting. The engagement was moving toward something. She had overheard enough to understand that the formal announcement was being planned, that timelines were being discussed, that the merger the two families had built this arrangement toward was approaching its conclusion. She had continued her work. She had not said anything. On the 14th evening, he sat down with his coffee and did not open anything to read. He simply sat. She continued her review of the month's accounts, which needed attention, and let the silence be what it was. After a while, he said, If you were going to say something, what would it be? She set down her pen. I'd ask you what you actually want. That's not practical. No, she agreed. But it's the question. He looked at his hands around the cup. I built something. I made choices to build it. The choices are part of the thing I built. You can't take out the choices and still have the building. No, she said. But sometimes you realize the building isn't what you were trying to make. What was I trying to make? Something I could be proud of, he said after a long pause. She looked at him. He was looking at the table. Not in the way people display things they're proud of, he said. Not the public version. Something that, when I was alone with it, felt like it was worth the cost. And does it? She asked quietly. Feel worth the cost? He didn't answer immediately, which was itself an answer. Parts of it, he said finally. The people I protect, there's a list of them. People who would have been destroyed by other organizations if mine hadn't existed. Small businesses in neighborhoods where protection used to mean exploitation. Families that sleep at night because my name on a street means something. He paused. That feels worth it. And the other parts? He turned his cup in his hands. The other parts feel like things I built because I didn't know what else to do with the anger. She was quiet. This was not a small thing he had said. She recognized it as such. What were you angry about? She asked. A long silence. Long enough that she thought he might not answer. My father, he said finally. He built the first version of this. He was good at it in the way that men who are very good at terrible things are good at them. I watched him be that person for 17 years. I told myself I would be different. He looked at his hands. I was different in some ways. Not enough ways. You're sitting in a kitchen at 10 at night being honest with a person you don't have to be honest with, she said. That's different. That's a very low bar. It's also not nothing. He looked at her. The full attention. You do that, he said. Do what? Take things I'm dismissing and hold them up until I have to actually look at them. Someone should, she said. You're very good at building arguments for why things don't count. Is that a criticism? It's an observation, she said. You can do what you want with it. He almost smiled again. You always say that. Because it's always true. Another silence, different from the others, not heavy, not empty, but the kind that existed between two people who had said enough real things that the silence could hold them without effort. Can I ask you something? He said. Yes. Why does it not frighten you? What I am. What this organization is. Most people, even people who work closely with it, they manage their fear. They're afraid, but they stay because the money or the protection is worth it to them. He looked at her directly. You're not afraid. She thought about how to answer this honestly. I'm cautious, she said. I'm always cautious. But fear is what I feel when things are unpredictable. When I can't read the room. She looked at him. I can read you. I've been able to read you since the first week. You're not unpredictable to me. Most people find me very unpredictable. Most people are reading the performance, she said. I'm not. He was quiet for a moment. What do you read? He asked. A person who built very large walls and is somewhat tired of living inside them, she said. A person who is more careful with other people than he is with himself. A person who makes coffee with too much attention because he doesn't get to pay attention to small things very often and the small things matter to him. She paused. A person who sat down in this kitchen on a dark evening because he needed somewhere that wasn't performing, and stayed because it turned out to be the only room in the house that gave him that. The kitchen was very quiet. You see a great deal, he said. I told you, she said. I notice everything. I can't turn it off. I'm glad you can't, he said. It was simply said, without the weight of something being offered or the carefulness of something being withheld. Simply said the way true things were when two people had been honest enough with each other long enough that the truth arrived without ceremony. She looked at her accounts. He looked at his cup. I'm glad too, she said. Most of the time. She looked at him. I don't know. That's the question I'd ask you. Silence. You're here to manage the household, he said. Not unkindly. Just accurately. Yes, she said. And I'm doing that. But we've been sitting in this kitchen 14 evenings, and I think we've both understood for a while that we're also doing something else. He looked up. I'm not saying it should be anything, she said carefully. I'm saying it's honest to name what it is. What is it? She thought about how to answer. Two people who find it easier to be themselves with each other than with most other people. That's not nothing. But it's also not, she paused. It's not permission for anything. Not while you're engaged. Not while the situation is what it is. He was quiet for a long time. You're the only person who talks to me like this, he said. I know. Why? Because you're worth talking to like this, she said simply. And because you respond to it. Most people don't respond to honesty, they manage it. You don't manage it. You just, she searched for the word. Receive it. He looked at her. The full attention, quiet and complete. I haven't made any decisions, he said. I know, she said. That's fine. Decisions take time. I'm not asking for one. What are you asking for? She picked up her pen again. Nothing. I'm telling you what I see the way I did with the flowers. You can do whatever you want with it. He nodded slowly. He finished his coffee. He said good night. He left. She sat at the table for a while after. She was not a person who did things carelessly or without full understanding of their consequences. She had said true things to a man she was employed by. She had named what was between them in a kitchen at night. She had offered no ultimatums, no demands, no conditions. She had told him what she saw. The rest was his. The engagement ended on a Thursday. She did not know this immediately. She knew it because Ji-won arrived on a day that was not her scheduled day, and the visit lasted 20 minutes rather than 3 hours. And when Ji-won left, the quality of the silence was different from the usual after-visit silence. Not heavier. Lighter in the specific way of things that have been set down after being carried too long. She continued her work. It was not her place to ask. He came to the kitchen that evening earlier than usual. 6:30 instead of 9. She was preparing the household dinner, which was not usually her task, but the chef had a family matter, and she had managed it rather than inconvenience him. He sat at the table and watched her work. Can I help? He said. She looked at him. Do you know how to cut vegetables? No. Then no. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. She handed him a knife and pointed at the onions. Watch your fingers, she said. Go slowly. He cut onions slowly and badly, and she corrected his grip twice without ceremony. And by the time the soup was ready his eyes were watering, which was the onions, and they ate together at the kitchen table because it was already set and it seemed unnecessary to move. The engagement is over, he said, between spoonfuls. I know, she said. I'm sorry if it was difficult. It wasn't, he said. It should have been, and it wasn't. That tells me something. What does it tell you? that it was always the wrong building. She looked at him. He looked back with the full attention, the quiet recognition. "I'm still your employer," he said. "Yes. And I'm aware that what I'm about to say is complicated by that. Say it anyway. I would like," he paused. "I would like the kitchen evenings to continue. And I would like them to eventually be something different than kitchen evenings. If you're willing." She was quiet for a moment. "That depends," she said. "On what? On whether you're choosing this because it's what you actually want, or because I said something true to you and you're responding to that." He thought about this seriously, the way he thought about everything she said. "Both," he said finally. "The true thing is what made me look. But what I see is what I'm choosing." She nodded slowly. "Then yes." They finished the soup. She washed the bowls. He dried them, which was not a thing she had expected and which he did without being asked, with the same slow, careful attention he had given the onions. "You're not going to make this easy," he said. "No," she agreed. "I didn't think so." He handed her the last bowl. "I'd like that. I've had easy. It wasn't good for anything." She put the bowl away. Outside the kitchen window, Seoul moved through its evening in the usual way, indifferent, enormous, entirely unconcerned. She thought about a woman who had learned to be practical and precise and careful with her words, who had taken a position because it was the best available option, who had said 4 words on a Tuesday to a man who needed to hear them. She thought about how some things started without announcement. "Good night," he said. "Good night," she said. He left. She stood in the kitchen for a moment in the specific quiet of a space that had recently become something it hadn't been before. Then she turned off the light and went to her room, and Seoul went on being Seoul outside, and the estate was quiet, and some things that begin without announcement are the truest ones. She had said she's not for you because it was true, and because he already knew it, and because some people needed someone to say the true thing out loud before they could act on it. She had not said it for him. She had said it because saying nothing was a kind of lie, and Rena Boateng did not lie, not even by silence, not even when it would have been easier. The rest of it, the kitchen evenings, the onions, the bowl he dried without being asked, none of that had been planned or strategized or managed. It had simply happened the way honest things happened, in the in-between spaces of ordinary days. He had been the most feared man in Seoul for 11 years. She had managed estates for 7. Neither of them had expected the kitchen. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story. Responding to that. He thought about this seriously, the way he thought about everything she said. "Both," he said finally. "The true thing is what made me look. But what I see is what I'm choosing." She nodded slowly. Then yes. They finished the soup. She washed the bowls. He dried them, which was not a thing she had expected and which he did without being asked, with the same slow, careful attention he had given the onions. "You're not going to make this easy," he said. No, she agreed. "I didn't think so." He handed her the last bowl. "I'd like that. I've had easy. It wasn't good for anything." She put the bowl away. Outside the kitchen window, Seoul moved through its evening in the usual way, indifferent, enormous, entirely unconcerned. She thought about a woman who had learned to be practical and precise and careful with her words, who had taken a position because it was the best available option, who had said 4 words on a Tuesday to a man who needed to hear them. She thought about how some things started without announcement. "Good night," he said. "Good night," she said. He left. She stood in the kitchen for a moment in the specific quiet of a space that had recently become something it hadn't been before. Then she turned off the light and went to her room, and Seoul went on being Seoul outside, and the estate was quiet, and some things that begin without announcement are the truest ones. She had said she's not for you because it was true, and because he already knew it, and because some people needed someone to say the true thing out loud before they could act on it. She had not said it for him. She had said it because saying nothing was a kind of lie, and Rena Boateng did not lie, not even by silence, not even when it would have been easier. The rest of it, the kitchen evenings, the onions, the bowl he dried without being asked, none of that had been planned or strategized or managed. It had simply happened the way honest things happened, in the in-between spaces of ordinary days. He had been the most feared man in Seoul for 11 years. She had managed estates for 7. Neither of them had expected the kitchen. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.